Hey folks, wintertime. And what do we do in wintertime? We will take a look at the Onwa AIS Transponder KS-200A Plus. Let's check it out. You know, I use Mariana on my boat. I did a test in the video here as well, but today I will test something different, and this is the Onwa AIS. Interesting is it's a transponder, so transmitter and receiver. However, as you know, without approvals you can't use it in, for example, Germany and so on. So you could only use it as a receiving device according to approvals. So this is the Onwa KS-200A Plus. This unit is quite interesting because it's affordable, and on the other hand it offers several interfaces for the AIS and also the GPS information. GPS, you need an external antenna, which you can, for example, use from Onwa itself. It's a passive antenna. Then you get the GPS information, and then you need another antenna for your AIS two-channel receiver here, and also transmitter if you have the approvals. And then you can forward this information via the several interfaces which are integrated here. What is integrated? It has Wi-Fi. I know that there was a predecessor which had no Wi-Fi. This one has Wi-Fi built in, so you can use the inbuilt web server to configure it, and then you can directly connect to this unit, or you can connect it, for example, to your Raspberry and get the GPS and AIS information directly on your Raspberry. So this is done via Wi-Fi, but it also has an NMEA 2000 output via cable, if you have all the connectors in NMEA 2000 anyway. And then there's also a way to connect NMEA 0183, but it has no RS422 interface. So the NMEA 0183 is either on the Wi-Fi channel or on the RS232 channel, which makes life maybe a bit complicated, as you need such kind of an adapter here to get the data in. But I will share how this is possible in a second. So let's connect our Onwa unit here. There's a cable with several connectors. There's also the power supply, the 12-volt power supply here on. You also see a silent mode pin. When you connect this to ground, then transmission is off, so that you use it as a receiving only unit, like on Mariana. There's a switch for that. Then there is also the RS232 connector on this cable. You see I have already a little plug connected, but we take a look later on this. And we can also connect, of course, here NMEA 2000. If you have NMEA 2000 with all the necessary cables, we need to connect the VHF antenna here on this plug and the GPS antenna on the SMA plug, which is there. So let's do this now for a little trial. So the GPS antenna here, and before the VHF antenna is already connected. And I will also connect 12 volts for demo with the battery. I use my Bosch tool battery. Of course, on your boat you use your main supply and your standard batteries, but in this case I can use the simple 12-volt battery of my Bosch equipment here and turn on the unit with the switch. When you turn it on, you will see that power is illuminated to a steady red, and you saw that GPS is flashing, and after a while it would get steady green. Steady green means the reception is there, so GPS is there. And the device will automatically set up a hotspot. When you connect, you can use this IP address to go to the web server and configure it. What can you configure? Of course, your ship's details like MMSI, the ship's name, the ship type, your call sign as ship type, for example, sailing vessel, and so on. This is all possible, and of course the GPS antenna position for the correction of your signal, especially if you transmit. This is necessary so that it knows where's your bow and where's your GPS antenna. And maybe even more important for the first setup is the configuration of the Wi-Fi settings. First of all, the port for your AIS messages. but you can also switch between TCP and UDP. I go for TCP usually always, but you can switch to UDP. When you want to change, and you should do this, your hotspot name, you can do this here, and of course also the IP range can be configured, and the password. And now this is also interesting. You can also connect to another Wi-Fi. So parallel to your hotspot, it will connect to another Wi-Fi. For example, your board Wi-Fi, and transmit AIS data directly to that. So when you don't use another channel like we do it in a second with AIS-232, you can connect it also via Wi-Fi, plus having a hotspot in parallel. Or you use just the hotspot and that's it. Then you have your data on your plotter. But I want to connect it to my Raspberry, and I use this WaveShare AIS-232 to USB adapter. It's easily detected by my Raspberry, no drivers needed. You see it already flashes that it receives data. AIS-232 can go up to 15 volts. Raspberry just can cope 5 volts. So we need this adapter here. We can't connect it to the UART connectors on the Raspberry itself. There's just 3.3 volt possible. So we use this adapter and get the data in serial of OpenPlotter, and you can see I already created one device. We will take a look also how to find out which device it is, but you can see it's a USB 0 device, and I named it ONWA, so that's how you can find it, and it's a standard NMIR 0183 device. And of course you also have to go to connections. You see I had a GPS connector which is currently not connected, so ignore that. But you have to go to connections and also say add to signal K. When this is new, it's not on signal K, but you need to add it to signal K so that we get the values there. And the baud is defined from ONWA, it's 38,400. So when you are here, you will see the devices which are not registered, like this one. You define an alias, the data, and you have your ONWA device, and then you go to connections and edit. So how do you ensure that this is there? For that, we can also take a look on the shell. When you're on your Raspberry, you can check a few things. For example, with LS-USB, you can check the USB devices, and you see and should see the FTDI device here, which is exactly our serial converter. You can also use the same command with -T, and you get a hierarchical structure so that you can see where are the devices on which bus. However, you can't see the mount name. For that, you usually need to check the devices. And for the devices, there are some defaults which are usually used. So when we go a bit up, you see the AMA0, which are often used, but for USB, the first one is TTY USB 0. And we created an alias here. See it's a different color. So that's our ONWA. If you want to check it, also this is possible. You can use the cat command, the device, and now the device name. And now both should work. Let's take the USB 0. And we get NMIR data, and this is not necessarily NMIR now. What we see is what is received on the serial port, and this is what is currently coming in on the serial port, and it has a NMIR structure, yes, but also if it would have a different format, we would see it. Yeah, and the same should be if we use the alias, because it is, what was it? It was called OP ONWA, yeah, exactly. OP ONWA, no. Yeah, yes. So, and you see, I get the same lines here. You can do this on all serial ports, and it will wait until data is there and continue until you abort with Control C. Yeah, that proves that it's working. The same happens in OpenPlotter, but we forward it to Signal K, and now we have all these information on Signal K. And I skip what you can do with that now on Signal K because we did it on several videos. When you have it on Signal K, you can put it to your chart plotter, whatever you like. You can forward it via Wi-Fi. We did this in several other videos. So with this ONWA unit, we also have another AIS on the market which is affordable. However, because of the approvals, it is at the end just a receiving unit, and the receiver can get cheaper with the daisy head, for example, which I would prefer honestly. Also because it is easy to misconfigure the Wi-Fi settings, and if you do that, you lock yourself out, and it's not so easy to get in afterwards. Because there is no direct interface, you need the RS-232 for that and an adapter and so on to reset the unit. I didn't find any command, another command or a switch where you can reset the instrument to defaults. You need to log in via RS-232 and set a command to set back to defaults. And this makes it not as easy as it should be. However, if you have no approval issue, it is one of the cheapest transponder units on the market, and it worked very good at the end. Yeah, so with Mariana I struggle a little bit. So my favorite currently is the daisy head for just receiving, but when you want to send, you should maybe spend a bit more and buy a professional unit from a manufacturer which is available here in Europe. However, this could be a trade-off if you are in a region where transmitting is allowed with this unit, and you can live with some drawbacks regarding the ease of use, for example, when you lock yourself out. My overall summary is that it worked quite well if it is configured properly. So good to go. However, as said, depends a little bit on your use case. So thanks for watching, and leave a thumb up if you enjoyed this video. I always are happy to get some feedback, also comments, and have a good day. Bye bye.
See you next time.